welcome to Peculiar Happenings. I'm Shelby,
And I'm Lee.
and I cannot hear you through the headphones again for some reason. It's very sad.
Interesting.
It only happened the one time,
Weird.
but I can still hear you fine without
Yeah, I
it.
can hear you fine too. So, I
So-
mean, I think we're good.
If it works,
It works.
If it works, it works. All right. So we have a special guest with us here today, and his name is Dan the Demogorgon.
Yes.
The Demogorgon.
He's our new little mascot.
He is. He is.
He's our little guy. We love him.
Yes, courtesy of my parents, courtesy of he fell down. Courtesy of one of my parents' friends from college who makes these wonderful little pipe cleaner guys. I have a little dragon from him. You'll see a picture of Dan on the thumbness for this episode.
Oh, yeah, you
We're
will.
Not. He's
Oh, yeah, you
getting
will.
included. He's an
And-
integral member of this team.
Exactly. He's the coolest little guy I've ever seen.
Mhm.
He's our own little Demogorgon, but he doesn't eat people. So that's good.
He's just vibing. He's
He
just here
doesn't,
for a good
yeah,
time.
he does not kidnap people and bring them to the upside
no.
down.
No. He's
No.
just chilling.
He's actually vegetarian, I think.
He's gone vegan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's like those sharks from Finding Nemo
yeah.
that are like fish are friends,
It's
not,
not
food.
food.
Exactly.
Live, laugh, love Dan the Demogorgon.
We love him so much. He's wonderful. I still have to ask my parents like if he has an Instagram account or something that we can tag
Yes.
him on
Yes.
when the
So
episode is uploaded.
if you guys want to purchase your own
Yeah.
Dan the Demogorgons,
Advertisement. No. This is an advertisement. We're just saying, hey, this is really cool and you should support this
Exactly.
artist. Yeah.
love supporting local
Exactly.
businesses.
So Lee, what is the focus of today's episode?
Oh, Shelby, I would love to tell you what the
Oh,
focus
please
of
do.
today's episode is.
Tell me about today's episode.
Today's episode is all about Nancy Wheeler. I know. Hold the applause, everyone. Hold the applause. Just kidding. Applaud.
Yes, applaud. Everyone should applaud Nancy Wheeler.
For real. She is the queen of all
I
queens.
know. Well, because we did the Steve special last week, and I feel like you can't do the Steve special without immediately following it up with Nancy.
Exactly.
Because obviously, called the Fruity Four is the common
Yes.
fan name, despite however accurate that may or may not be.
yeah.
That's the name for like Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie. And we also want to talk about Robin and Eddie at some time.
Yes.
But they're
For
more
sure.
recent characters. Robin's only been around since season 3. Eddie was only around for season 4. Then he kicked
Yeah.
the bucket.
Rest in power.
Rest in Power King. So we're probably gonna have an episode for them all by themselves, but today is Nancy, because Nancy's the OG. She's been there since the beginning.
Since day one.
Since day one. Since literal episode
Literally.
1.
Episode 1, season 1. She has been there.
Exactly.
And she's also one of those characters that had a really,
Fantastic development.
yeah,
I think.
a really good arc.
Yes.
Just like Steve, where she's not the character she was at the beginning of the series. And so
Exactly.
it's really fun
it is really
to
fun.
think about her.
It is really fun. So let's start with season 1. Who is
Yes.
Nancy Wheeler in season 1?
She is very much the popular girl.
I would say I would contest that. I don't think she's the popular girl. I think she
Mhm.
wants to be the popular girl.
That's very true.
And that serves as a lot of motivation for her relationship with Steve. I feel like she has a reputation as sort of like, the good girl.
Yeah,
Like-
that fits her. I mean, her whole style is very girlish and pink.
It's preppy.
Yes.
It's very preppy. She's very studious. She gets good grades. She doesn't do anything bad.
Mhm.
Very much, like I said, kind of like maybe like a nerd. Not a nerd, but
Yeah, but she
very
was
driven.
she was definitely one of the kids who took all AP classes
Oh,
and
yeah.
strove to be, the head of her class. What do you call that?
like class president.
Yes.
That's the vibe. That is
Yeah.
the vibe.
That is Nancy Wheeler's vibe in season 1.
Yes.
100%. And she's like, one could argue she's slightly a damsel in distress, but that
Mhm.
doesn't last long.
No.
At all?
No, not at all. Not at
She
all.
starts swinging a bat, and then
Oh,
she
yeah.
takes over. And as we'll talk about later, she always has a gun. She is the girl.
Yes.
who-
She's always prepared.
Yes, she is.
I saw a funny video once referred to that. There's no way I can describe this in a way that makes sense, but the phrase "Nancy with the 9" comes to mind, as in to reference the fact that she has like a gun every
Yep.
season. But that doesn't make sense. But you get whatever.
I get what you mean.
Yes.
I get the vibes.
Yes, but I was gonna say, I think one of the things that's really interesting about Nancy in season 1 is that she's kind of like the opposite of the final girl. And I talked to
Mhm.
I talked to you I talked to you at lunch about this yesterday a little bit. She's the inverse of the final girl, because the final girl is usually the last one left alive in a horror movie. She's usually the girl that is basically, for all intents and purposes, like Nancy. Very like studious, doesn't do anything considered bad, and that's the reason she survives. Usually the girls that do die in the horror movies are the ones who have boyfriends and do things with said boyfriends.
Mhm.
You know? So technically, Barb should have been the one to be the final girl because she didn't do those terrible, awful
Yeah.
things. Ooh. But Nancy did. But we have like the subversion of that because Nancy survives and Barb is the one who dies, and I think that's
Exactly.
really fascinating. I really do
It
like that a
is.
lot.
It is. Doesn't Barb, she dies the end of episode 1, right?
I think it is. Well,
Is it, or is it episode 2?
maybe it might have been episode 2 because I think episode 1
Is all dedicated to Will, do you think?
yeah, because I think episode 1 ends with Will disappearing. I can't remember. We should rewatch season 1.
Yes, we should. We should.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
We're your Stranger Things know-it-alls, but then when it comes
Yeah.
to remembering the specific episodes
Yeah.
in which
Well,
these things occur, it all floods together.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen each season probably at least twice,
Yeah,
but I couldn't tell
same.
you like the specific episode stuff is from.
Me either. It really just
Yeah.
bleeds together, especially
yeah.
if you binge a couple episodes in a row.
Oh yeah.
You don't know what happened in which
Yeah.
episode anymore.
Oh, exactly. But yeah, I don't know. Season 1 Nancy is very fun because I do think, again, like I said with Steve, it would have been really easy for them to go with sort of the typical expected route and make her kind of like this helpless girl who sort of got in over her head. And I feel like for a little that is who she is. But like you said,
Yeah.
like after a while, she's like, okay, enough of that. She like puts her hair up in a ponytail and grabs a bat with like nails in it
Yeah.
and starts practicing swinging it around. Like,
Oh, she starts swinging that like she's going to like hit a home run at a
like
baseball game.
it's like she's auditioning for Major League Baseball.
Exactly. And her friend goes missing. And I think the thing is, at first, I think the first episode or 2 is where we really see a different version of Nancy before Barb dies.
Yes.
It's kind of that like pre-transformation, if you will.
Mhm.
And then Barb dying was really what flipped a switch for her.
Yes, I think I agree.
Yeah. And I think too, part of that has to do with the fact that I think she blames herself for what happened to Barb, because partly she kind of,
Because
it's slightly her fault, just slightly.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not like she did anything that directly like
Yeah.
contributed to her death. It's just she happened to be busy doing other things while Barb was like sitting outside in the pool, and
Yeah.
then an interdimensional creature attacked her.
Which also, why was Barb just sitting outside in the pool, letting her blood drip into the pool?
You
She was
know-
just sitting there, so aesthetically, I guess, if you could say, just like looking at the pool, just chilling.
But I think in character-wise that makes sense. Because this is a party with
That's
some of
true.
the more popular people at Hawkins, which obviously from the beginning it's implied that Nancy and Barb aren't really there. Nancy wants to do this. Nancy sort of wants to move up the social ladder. Barb doesn't really. She doesn't want to be there. She doesn't like it. She's not having a good time. So she's just that's what I would be doing in this party. If I had a friend that
Yeah.
dragged me along to a party I wouldn't want to be at, sooner or later I would just end up sitting by myself, like reading stuff on my phone.
Yeah, I
Like-
would end up leaving. That's the
Yeah.
only thing is I wish Barb had left, even though I know then the whole premise of her dying and then Nancy, like this whole arc wouldn't have happened. But I feel for Barb, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I-
Well,
Have you ever seen the commercial that came out recently
oh my
with
God.
Barb in it?
Yes, I did see that.
It was like the ranch commercial or
Yes,
something.
It was foul.
Oh my God.
That
My
was funny.
sister sent it to me on TikTok, I think, and I lost it because it's literally just Barb being like, sometimes you want us to come back, but we'll
We
never
don't.
come back.
That was pretty good though. That was pretty good.
It was very funny.
But I was gonna say, I feel like it's in line with her character to
Yeah.
have stayed though, because it's her friend. She's by herself in an unfamiliar situation.
Mhm.
As much as I would hate to be there, like I wouldn't leave you or one of my other friends alone at a house with some dudes that like we hardly know. Like,
Yeah,
me
that's so
personally,
valid.
I'm
I
not
wouldn't
doing
either. I'd
not-
sit through it,
Yeah.
and I feel for her though, and I don't
Yeah.
know. It does
Gone too soon.
gone too soon.
Fly high.
Rest in power, Barb.
Rest in power.
I can just think about all the characters that are just in the Stranger Things lore who have all died. because of
you'll
this.
never run out. You'll
You'll
ones
never
to
run
think
out.
about.
And then in season 3, sorry, not to get off topic, but in season 3, then you have all the townspeople who died, like
oh my
creating
God, yeah.
the embodiment of the mind flayer. That's a
Yeah,
whole other
that's
conversation.
a whole other thing. Like the
So
death
many
count for this
people.
town is off the rails.
Yeah, I'm surprised no one moved out sooner than
I
later.
know, right?
I would have moved
Well,
out
to
after
be
Will went
fair-
missing.
To be fair, like how much of this happens, and you're just like, oh, this just kind of happens sometimes in a small
Yeah.
town. I feel like every
That's
small
true.
town has at least one incident every so often.
Oh, for sure. Thinking about it now, I mean, I have a couple that come to mind that I won't talk about on the podcast because
I
not time to talk about
Real.
that, but
yeah, But I feel like if it's more people though, that would have
Mhm.
started to raise some flags. I think
Yeah.
rather than just like the one-off deaths.
Yeah.
But okay, so season 1, Nancy, very sort of we see the beginning of the character
Mhm.
she's going to become.
Yeah.
And yes, oh yes, I forgot we had a whole other back to our planning paper.
Yes, we do.
All right. So season 1, we talked about Barb. Oh, she's kind of the annoying older sister to Mike. That
Yeah.
is her first incarnation.
Yes.
Sort of the annoying older sister who's trying to be like popular and cool.
Mhm. Trying to be someone that she's not necessarily.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like down on what she wanted or anything. And, she is a very beautiful person. She has so much potential, but she was kind of trying to force this on herself.
Yes.
And like we talked about in the Steve special, he definitely, it's hard because when you're in high school, that's all your life feels like it's ever
Yep.
going to be. And so if she's not popular in high school, she wants to go on and do something.
Mm-hmm.
But really, with her smarts and everything and going on to college, she has this whole life ahead of her where we see Steve, who was the popular guy and who was kind of idealized. He peaked in high school. And now he's working at Scoops Ahoy in a record, not a record.
You know what?
you know what I
Honestly,
mean.
I would if I was working at a place with like one of my friends, I would be pretty happy. I can't even lie. I mean, it would suck to not have the sort of direction that I think college or something gives me, but like I think no matter the circumstances, as long as I have like a couple of friends I can like hang out with every day, I'm chill. I'm chilling.
Yeah.
I'll survive.
I would find a way to fit just to fit in that life and be like, you know what?
Yeah.
I can vibe.
Because I was gonna say, and back to the point of what you were saying, I feel like the high school popularity was too superficial and too shallow for Nancy. Because I feel like Nancy, she's such a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? She's such a sort of genuine, like, I don't want to say hard-headed because that sounds negative. She's very assertive. She's very genuine. She knows what she wants. I think she's very confident.
Yeah.
Just an incredible person. I feel like high school popularity is below her. I feel like it's too shallow for her. She's better than that. She's so much better than that.
Well, she's gonna go on and do all these things, and like we're gonna talk about later, I think probably more around season 3 for her is her career path and this life in newscasting and research that she probably has, and she has so much potential, and it's so hard when you are in high school and you feel like that's the only thing.
You only ever think about it. Like in high school, I know myself, I didn't start thinking about what I'd be doing after high school until like junior or senior year when I was like, oh wait, the passage of time?
That's a thing?
What?
Oh my god.
What do you mean? Like, what do you mean I'm not stuck in purgatory forever? Like,
I'm not stuck in high school forever.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she fell for Steve, and it obviously didn't really end up well. But Steve, like we talked about, I think he was a decent boyfriend to her in the end. I mean, obviously he was kind of a jerk.
He was a jerk season 1.
But Joe Keery made him a better version of Steve.
Yes, exactly, because we were going to talk about some of the trivia. Some of the trivia was that originally a whole arc for Nancy was to be sort of grappling with this sort of, I think, complex, heavy trauma, because originally Steve's character was supposed to, like, assault her, which, first of all, that's
crazy thing.
I don't think I would have liked to see that in Stranger Things.
No.
I think it's a realistic thing that needs to be addressed, but it's always difficult for me to, like, sort of feel these things out, because it's like, on one hand, yes, this is something that's really important and affects a lot of people and needs to be talked about, but on the other hand, it's upsetting for me to see.
Yeah, and it's an upsetting thing to grapple with, and I think it would have added a whole other layer to the show that would have complicated it, and I think, then you wouldn't have this whole arc with Steve, because
who was also supposed to die in the first season.
Exactly, and I think if they had kept that plot line of him like assaulting her and then dying, then you wouldn't have this whole other arc that happens later on.
Yes, I think a lot of the aspects of the show would have been a lot more stagnant without Steve there.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, and because I guess that's more, again, Steve trivia rather than Nancy trivia, but it said that they changed that because the way that Joe Keery played Steve, he was like too charismatic and likable and kind. Which honestly, I like the version of Steve we got. I like this one a lot better.
And then I mean, he, by being the Steve that he was, that Joe Keery portrayed him, ended up helping Natalia Dyer's version of Nancy to portray her as a different character who grew so much throughout the series.
Exactly. And I think, so speaking of this, season 1 is where the love triangle is sort of established with Nancy and Steve and Jonathan. And listen, Norm, I do not like love triangles.
Me either.
There's a surplus of love triangles in media intended to be made for like young adults or teenagers. I know this because that was the genre I mostly read in middle school and high school.
Same.
And it was like every book I cracked open, it was always a love triangle.
Always a love triangle.
And this girl was like, how can I choose between two of the most mediocre men you've ever seen? And I was like, girl, no.
Yeah.
Please
You have so much.
Stop the madness.
You have so much. You could go on and find the best person ever. These people don't deserve you.
Exactly.
And you could always tell from the beginning who they were going to end up with anyways.
It was just terrible. But
a whole other rant.
The Stranger Things love triangle feels different to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still not something I enjoy greatly, but it's a lot more tolerable than a lot of other love triangles I've read. And I think that in part is because each of the members of the love triangle are their own well-rounded, like very complex, I already said well-rounded. What's the word I'm looking for? There's nuance to them. They're all well-developed individuals. They're not just like the 2D caricatures you often see in love triangles in media, where it's like, have you seen The Wednesday Show?
Yes.
Because I will use The Wednesday Show as an example.
Yes.
Because there is a deep burning hatred in my heart for what that show did to the Addams family. I will never forgive them. We won't get into that. I need a whole separate podcast to discuss my dislike of that show. But, because you know what I mean, right? The love triangle with Wednesday. The only personality traits the love interests had is like one had brown hair and was nice and bubbly, and the other one had dark hair but was a dark, tortured artist. And that is all we got from them. Yeah. 2D caricatures. But
yeah. I couldn't see her ending up with either of them.
Yes, I know, right? We're starting to get off track. But we don't have that with Steve and Jonathan, because Steve, even in season 1, even if he is more of a jerk, well-rounded. Jonathan, even if he is a bit of a creep, well-rounded. And Nancy herself, it's well-rounded. It comes down. It's very well written, and I think that is what makes it like standable for me.
Yeah, and I think with Nancy in regards to season 1 and 2, Nancy, you know, when you're young, obviously I say that like I'm not 19.
Back in my day.
Back in my day, it was this way. No.
Yeah.
I feel like
when you were younger.
Yeah, and I feel like as someone who's recently gotten out of high school and is now started to like grow into adulthood and I'm figuring that out. I'm wading the waters, you know. I think her relationship with both Steve and Jonathan was important to Nancy's character development. And I think, you know, as a young person, experiencing things like that in high school, you know, young love or any kind of, I don't know, maybe trauma that you're grappling with or struggles, mental health, anything, it kind of helps you develop who you are as a person. And then I mean, I wasn't the person I am now when I was in high school. Like if we had met then, you wouldn't even recognize me.
You would not. I still had the really bad side part that I've had since like 2012.
Yeah, I was the sports kid that wore leggings and Adidas sweatshirts every day.
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
I was straight.
I can.
That's another story.
Not that last part, but I can kind of see the rest of it a little bit.
It definitely is still slightly a part of me, but not as much as it was. And I definitely found different forms of media like Stranger Things that also kind of helped, you know, make me the person I am today.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, we're also talking about Nancy. I won't get on into my lore.
That's another episode.
Another episode. All of Lee's trauma. Yeah. Let's get into it.
It's so true. But I was going to say, because I feel like, and I do feel like it does make sense because especially when you're in high school, especially in the 80s, there is immense pressure to be with someone romantically.
Yeah.
And to have that sort of, like, to have that in your life, I think. Even if you're not ready for it, that's just kind of, I feel like that's the expectation. I feel like that is still kind of a big expectation now. But, because I talked to my parents about it after we watched The Breakfast Club, but they said it was like a lot more, like people were a lot more pushy with that sort of aspect of your life, I guess.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Especially with, you know, she's been exposed to her parents and her mom. You know, her mom's a stay-at-home mom. She doesn't really work.
Yeah.
You know, she's there. She's raising, what's the youngest kids? Because it's Mike, Nancy, and they have another daughter that isn't always mentioned, but she's there.
I need to search this up.
Isn't it like Polly or something? It starts with a P, I think, or something like that.
I'm gonna search it up now because it's gonna
bother both of us.
It's gonna bother me, yeah.
But you know, she's here with that and seeing how her mom is living her life and how, you know, she married young. She lives in a nice suburban house. Holly. That's why I was like, Polly. It was something.
You were
Um,
close. Anyway, yes.
yeah, and so she has that expectation for herself, and that everyone else has that expectation for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so you even see, like, Mrs. Wheeler struggles with that later on in season 3,
Yep.
because she's sitting here and she's like, well, I'm not happy with the life I'm living. And so it makes me happy that Nancy kind of went through that and realized, hey, that's not going to make me happy.
Yes. She was like,
So,
I'm gonna do things my own way.
which
Okay.
then can lead us into the later seasons, because that's
Yes.
something we also have written down for later as well.
Yes. Okay. So moving on to season 2. So
Yes.
season 2, this is the one that's freshest in our minds because
Mhm.
we've been watching it recently.
Yes.
We're so close to being done. We're hopefully going to be able to finish it tomorrow. We're almost there. But season 2, she's sort of, what do we have? I'm trying to figure out. Is that reveal death? Oh, yes, I just remember what you meant by that. Sorry. The word really threw me off and my brain just went blank. Season 2, we see Nancy sort of really, I think, grappling with the aftermath of Barb's death. Because again, there's the scene at the Halloween party where she's like, we're pretending that everything's okay and we're in love and it's stupid. And you can just see Steve's heart break in real time.
Oh, poor guy.
But, and this is also the season where Steve and Nancy break up. She gets in contact with Murray to try to dig into things, reveal some stuff.
Yeah,
and this is where she gets together with Jonathan officially.
Exactly, because she wants Barb's parents to understand and know what happened to Barb, because she's seeing them spend all of their money on Murray, who's the private investigator, to the point where they're selling their house. And they're eating, fast food every night for dinner because they can't afford anything else.
No, which honestly, I love Murray as a character. He was kind of wrong for that.
Yeah.
He's kind of wrong for like charging this grieving family absurd amounts of money.
Yeah.
But I guess Murray does.
He was also kind of living in his own like poverty as well. He's living in this kind of, I mean, it was a good place for probably what he was doing, but
honestly,
he's living.
That was a really nice place.
It was pretty cool.
Despite the lack of like any windows or natural light, that was a pretty nice house.
Exactly. But on the outside, it wasn't necessarily like a great place. It was giving an alleyway, basically.
He was giving apocalypse prepper, doomsday prepper.
Oh, he
vibes.
Definitely is.
Oh,
he definitely has bottles of like water, cans of food,
cans and cans of peaches.
Oh yeah. Some like canned tuna that won't go bad for years or something. I don't know. That man's got it all.
Oh yeah.
But we definitely see that side of Nancy wanting to reveal that, and I think that's where her investigative.
Yes.
Her love for investigation and news reporting and all this stuff comes out, because she wants to reveal that. Because it's a really deep trauma she goes through, but it also shows her, hey, this is what I want to do with my life. And sometimes those really traumatic moments in your life do reveal that for some reason. Who knows how that works, but it happens.
And I was going to say, I feel like we see it in season 1 too, but I feel like season 2 is where we sort of get that really solid transition into we get a Nancy who's like taking charge, who's like doing something about it,
Exactly. It wasn't really Jonathan's idea at all. She goes, hey, I need help with this. You're helping me.
She's like, you're coming with me. And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, get in the car. We're going somewhere. And he's like, okay, I guess.
Like, all right, I like you, so I'll follow along.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
And we have that iconic scene with Murray where he's like, why don't you just share the bed? And then he's talking about, well, there's a pullout in the other room.
Oh, yeah. I think it's funny how that in both season 2 and season 4, Murray's been the one who's like clocked the vibes between like Nancy and Jonathan, and then like Hopper and Joyce.
So much. He's just the love guru over here.
Oh my god, he is. He's the matchmaker.
Exactly. I think it just works because he's such a blunt character that he will not give you
he says
any
it like
room
it
to
is.
wiggle.
He says it like
it is. He has no filter, and he's okay with that.
Exactly.
Completely okay with that, which helps Nancy and Jonathan get together. And then that's kind of Nancy's one of the big points in her arc, I think, of season 2.
Yes.
Because I know at the end of season 2, when they all come back together and they're gonna expel the mind flayer from Will.
Yes, I remember. That's in the cabin. We're probably gonna get to that like tomorrow.
We will. And then Steve notices and he says that Nancy can go with Jonathan and Joyce. And that's kind of the moment where I feel like Steve kind of takes the high ground and is kind of like
he lets her go.
He knows he can't do anything.
Happy.
Yeah. And I mean, they're already kind of broken up.
Yeah.
And he knows something's going on, and he's just like, I can't do anything about this, so I'm gonna step away.
Oh yeah, which honestly, that's a very mature thing for him.
It is.
And yeah, again, Nancy just, I think, yeah, I don't know. I think, what was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought. Yes,
That's
flip
okay.
around to the back. Yes, yes. Marie. Oh, we almost forgot the lovely moment when she dances with Dustin at the snowball.
My favorite
Because
ending to a
Nancy
season
is an
ever.
incredible person.
She is. She is. The snowball. What happens at the snowball, Shelby?
Oh, well, the snowball is this is also the season where we see sort of Steve teach Dustin his hair secrets.
Yeah.
Which, okay, side note, his intentions were good, but Dustin has curly hair. Their hair is
Completely different.
completely different. So I'm sorry, Steve, love you. Whatever you do is not going to work for Dustin.
Yeah.
But his hair still did look really nice.
It did look really
It still
nice.
looked fantastic.
But I felt so bad because he
It was
tried so
so
hard
bad.
and people were making fun of him.
People were
And
making fun.
poor guy.
And then Nancy was like, not on my watch.
Nope.
I loved the line where she was like dancing with him and she was like, yeah, this is gonna make them all jealous because you're dancing with an older girl. That's cooler. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, she's such a nice character too.
She is.
Because she didn't have to do that, but she did.
Yeah, and that's so different from how she was in season 1 because at the beginning, the first episode of season 1, Dustin runs
Mhm.
upstairs with the last slice of pizza to give to Nancy. And Nancy gets up because she's on the phone with a friend. She
Mhm.
gets up and slams the door in his face
Aww.
because she's like, "Stay away from me."
Yes.
But then the end of season 2, she walks right up to him and offers to dance with him because he's sad because all his friends are out dancing with people. They're not caring about what's happening to
Mhm.
Dustin. And poor guy was just trying to,
Oh,
be
yeah.
confident.
And I feel like a part of that is because, again, by season 2, she has it more. She understands the same things that they do. That there's weird stuff going on in Hawkins, so they've got this level of connection. But that was a really nice scene because I can't even remember because it was like, well, Max and Lucas were paired up. You had Elle and Mike. Did they show Will dancing with a girl?
There was
I'm
a
inclined
brief.
to say they did.
They do. There was a brief moment
Yeah.
where a girl walks up and says like, "Want to dance, zombie boy?" or something like
Oh,
that.
and he's like,
and
okay.
then he's like, he like looks at his friends, I think, and then they go, "Yeah." I was shaking my head. I realized that no one else can see that. They kind of like nod to him or something, and then
Yeah.
he like goes off, and then Dustin. It shows Dustin going around all these other girls, and they're all kind of laughing at him, and then poor guy's crying in the corner. It makes me cry every time.
It's so sad, but then Nancy
Nancy for the win. Nancy for the win.
Nancy is the hero.
Exactly.
Of the day.
And I think that whole scene kind of just shows you her growth as a character within a season, really.
Oh yes.
From where she ended season 1 at. Because when we end season 1, we see her still with Steve.
Yep.
And she grows so much within that. She still grows in season 1 a lot, but completely different in season 2.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I think this is a good point to mention season 3, which I think season 3 has got to be my favorite season. Yeah. I really love the Halloween aspects and the spookier aspects of season 2. But I just love the vibes of season 3 so much. Yeah. It's like that bright 80s summer vibe that hits you right in the face.
The set is different. We get to see a different part of Hawkins that we haven't seen before. Because in Hawkins, we've really only seen the kids' houses. And then in
like
season...
the school.
Yeah. And then in season 2, I guess in season 1 a bit, we see where Joyce works a little bit. At that... it's kind of like a drugstore almost, convenience store.
Yeah,
kinda.
Convenience store.
Something like that. And so we only see snippets of it. But in season 3, we really get to see the town for what it is and all the people and everything. And I think a fun fact that I know, I'm pretty sure this is true. Don't quote me on it though. But I saw somewhere that they bought out part of a mall to make that set. And so they closed it off. So it was still a running and working mall in part of it. And then the other part they renovated completely to change it into an 80s mall.
That would be super cool.
It's so fun.
That sounds so cool.
Imagine just hearing like, oh, your mall's closed and you don't know why, and you go to the mall one day and you see like cameras, and then the Stranger Things cast is just
like,
getting filmed there.
God,
like,
Joe Keery?
Can I have your autograph? Sign my forehead.
Exactly. But yes, I do. Season 3 is so good, and especially I think Nancy and Jonathan, because this is where we begin to see the first sort of speed bump in Nancy and Jonathan's relationship, because they've got the job at this reporting place. And from the very beginning, it's very set up that Nancy is constantly being sort of disrespected. She's treated with a very demeaning manner by the male staff.
Yeah.
And because I was going to say, we have this written down, and I love this. This was a really good, because it was such a complex thing, too, which is that Nancy is upset because she's not being treated with respect, and she should be treated with respect. And that's something that's really fundamentally upsetting to her. But Jonathan, I think, sort of doesn't get it. And this is the way my dad phrased it, which is Jonathan, he's working class. He needs to work to support his family. To him, it doesn't matter how you're treated. If you have a job, you have a job. You're getting money. And also, because he can't understand Nancy's side of it, because he's never been treated that way. But also, Nancy, being from sort of an upper middle class family, can't understand his side of it. So you've got this really interesting clash, I think, because neither of them are wrong for thinking that. Nancy's not wrong for wanting to be treated with respect, and Jonathan's not wrong for being like, listen, a job is a job. I gotta work to support my family.
Exactly. And they're both kind of treated differently too in that aspect, because for Nancy too, she's like, well, you're a guy, you don't understand it. But he's kind of like, well, I'll do anything for the money I'm getting. And he was also doing a different form of the job. He was a photographer. He was taking photos, and he was in the dark room developing photos the whole
Off by
time.
himself for the most part.
He was just vibing. And then Nancy was over here, and she wasn't able to write anything, and that's really what she wanted to do.
She was put in she was assigned the job of sort of like a personal assistant, like someone you'd be like, hey, can you get me a coffee?
Yeah, that's exactly what she was doing. And then they were treating her terribly. And if she messed up their order, I think there was a scene where she messed up an order and they got mad at her.
Yep.
And
they call her Nancy Drew in a very demeaning way, making fun of her dreams. And there's also the whole thing where like they play the prank. It's just straight up workplace harassment with like the fake rat.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And so that's kind of their first road bump, in the sense of like, oh, we see this differently. How are we going to work through it? And I'm pretty sure they don't communicate for a lot of the season, and they kind of argue. And then that's when we get that amazing scene in the hospital when they get chased, because then their boss gets possessed basically by the mind flayer.
Oh yeah, well, because I mean, they do spend a lot of the season working together, though. I think because they go to visit the old lady. Gives them lemonade and then goes like off the walls a little.
Because Jonathan wants to support Nancy and follow the lead, but I'm pretty sure that he starts being like, hey, nothing's happening, let's go, because they're not finding any evidence of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's when eventually the scene in the hospital happens, because they go to visit her in the hospital.
Yes, that's exactly why it happens.
And I remember everyone else sits outside, like all the kids, because that's also in season 3.
They have the candy, they're like sharing candy.
Because in that season, we talked about it at lunch, how, she, in the first 2 seasons, she was a bit separate from all the kids. And now in season 3, she was more with the kids. Yep. Well, at least most of them, because Dustin was off with Steve and Robin. Yes. And so that was kind of a new split that we saw happen in that season. And so her and Jonathan are in the elevator, and they're kind of not talking to each other. And then obviously they're running through and doing all this stuff. They get separated. And so like their characters kind of then, I think, glaze over the fact that they're like, oh, doesn't matter that we were arguing. We just
we've
almost
got
died.
Bigger things at hand.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And it's crazy. I watched a fun video of the cast. So sometimes, I think it was around when season 3 happened. I don't know if they did it for season 4. Some of the cast members would watch scenes of the show and do a play-by-play and pause, be like, oh, when we were filming this happened, or when we filmed this happened. And I can't remember his last name, but anyways, so the actors of Nancy and Jonathan were sitting and watching the scene of them running through the hospital and the separation and everything. And they were remarking on, how like winded they were doing that and how they had to repeat it over and over again. And, they're sweaty, but they also have like fake sweat, like sprayed on them.
Like,
so
a little spray bottle.
Yeah. So they were like, we were sticky from that. And then we were actually sweating, and it was so hot in there. And then, the lights are flashing, and it was just like very kind of overwhelming, but it turned out really cool. And so it was just fun to see like their perspective on it, which isn't really about Nancy's arc, but it's just a fun fact.
It's still relevant. It's still relevant.
I love those behind the scene things about talking about the actors. I was in a musical and a play my senior year, and I still miss it. It was a Harry Potter play. It was it was not affiliated with J.K. Rowling though. It was called Puffs.
I've heard of that.
It's fun. It's a fun show.
Wasn't there a production here or something?
Yes, there was. Okay, there was. And then our musical was Crazy for You, which was a Western kind of story.
I haven't heard of that one.
So fun. I love behind the scenes stuff. I'm a sucker for that.
No, I also think it's really fascinating to look at like how these sort of things are produced and done. And, like, fun stuff that happens.
Exactly.
When the cameras stop rolling,
Exactly, because it's not all about, the flashy aspects of it. There's so much other stuff going on, which is really fun. But season 3 is really great for Nancy's arc. We kind of see that separation of her from, I feel like, any of the guys too. Like she's kind of more independent in that sense, which is fun.
Oh yeah, that's let's see, what else was there? Um, I've reached a blank. But yeah, I think sometimes I just gotta talk and figure out what I'm gonna say as I'm going. So that's what I'm doing.
That's okay. We could also transfer over to season 4.
We could. I think, yes, I think this is a good point to go to season 4. Because I think we said, does Nancy have a moment in season 3 where she has like a weapon? Because season 1,
Yes.
season 2, of course.
It's-
Season 3, I can't remember.
The episode Battle of Starcourt Mall, and she comes walking up and she starts shooting at, I think, Billy, maybe. And she has like a pistol of some sort or a handgun of some sort.
We love that for her.
Love that. And then in season 4, we get the beautiful image of her with the sawed-off rifle.
Oh my god,
Great,
yes.
Great look for her.
Incredible.
Live, laugh, love. I love how illegal that was. That's so illegal. She's sawing it off with Max, and Max is like, "What are we doing?" She's just sawing the rifle.
I
Great.
do. I love that so much for Nancy though. That was genuinely okay. Nancy, who I think sort of still might have this reputation, because Eddie mentioned it himself. He was like, Nancy Wheeler has guns.
Yeah,
because she still kind of has this reputation. I think as like a goody two shoes, as sort of like kind of like this upstanding, very like academic oriented.
Well, because no one in the school knows any of this.
No one in the school knows. No one in the school knows. She's like the class president.
Yep.
And then I do just love. I forgot the scene where she's just like sawing off the shotgun. That is.
It's when they're preparing for battle.
That's beautiful.
I know. I loved that whole scene because you have Steve and Robin, and they're making the they're
Molotov
putting
cocktails.
Yeah, and then you have Max and Nancy, and Nancy's like sawing the rifle off,
which I feel like,
which is a great image.
Max and Nancy is a duo we need to see more of.
Yes,
they're both very sort of like independent, confident, assertive girls.
And we need to see more of Nancy and Robin.
Yes,
Nancy and Robin.
I love how they handled like their sort of relationship and getting to know each other, because initially, because Robin is so close with Steve, right?
Yeah.
And it's this season. I don't like it, but I think that it does seem like they're trying to rekindle Steve and Nancy.
Yeah.
So Nancy sees this other girl who's very close to Steve. So I think, because I didn't realize at first, I was like, why does Nancy not like Robin? What is her problem? And I was like, oh, she's probably jealous. Maybe she thinks they're like a thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is so funny, because to think about Nancy being like, oh, she stole my man. And it's just a hard cut to like the most queer individual you've ever
Literally.
seen. Like
the most lesbian woman you've ever seen in your life.
In like a 50-mile radius.
Yeah. She was wearing suspenders and a blazer.
I know, right?
Bestie,
that was a great outfit.
Band.
It
was a great outfit.
That was
a great outfit. I loved her because we don't, like we said before, we in the last episode, we don't get to see her in anything else other than her Scoops Ahoy outfit.
Exactly.
And
season
so it
3
was
just
so good.
And
so good.
I feel like season 4, it did not disappoint with the introduction of Robin's style.
Okay.
I loved her jean jacket with like the patches and stuff.
Oh,
but
it was
anyway,
so good.
This is about Nancy. And I think because at first she sort of maybe underestimated Robin's intelligence a little, because she doesn't know her. Robin's kind of, I feel like for the most part, happy-go-lucky. She's just kind of vibing. Yeah. She's there for a good time.
Yeah. She's a very like fearful character, which I love.
Yes, she's cautious. She's not quite as jaded as these other guys.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I feel like Nancy's like, oh, there's a Demogorgon. Let me just go get my shotgun. Get me a beer and a shotgun, and I'll have this handled. Meanwhile, Robin's like, oh, this is actually kind of crazy, guys. How are you so calm?
Yeah, I just realized. So we were talking yesterday, and I was saying there's the bravado, there's the fear, and the intelligence.
Yes.
Nancy's intelligence. Robin is fear. No, Steve is intelligence. Robin is fear.
Steve is intelligence.
In a sense, because then Nancy's bravado, would you say? Because she runs in and kind of does things over and over again.
I would say they all have aspects of all of it, actually.
True.
Honestly.
That's true. That is,
I like that. I like that. Steve is the intelligence.
Because in a sense, he's kind of like, hey, guys, let's not do that. And if we do that, I'm coming with you.
He's kind of common sense.
Yeah.
In a way.
Exactly. He's a bit of the voice of reason.
Except for
especially
that time
with the kids.
He dove into the lake and swam through a portal to another dimension. Well, he didn't. He got dragged through, so never mind.
That's when his bravado comes through. That's when his little bit of bravado comes through.
I think so.
I think he was doing that to kind of show off for Nancy, though. A little bit.
He was like, oh, an excuse to take my shirt off in front of a girl I like. Well, if you insist. Everyone was like, no, we're not insisting. And he was like, too late. I've done it.
Too late. I've done it.
But yeah, I love the scene where they're like doing research at the library.
Yeah.
Too. Robin's like, Nancy. And she just slowly leans out and she's like, what is it? Yeah, what's up? Because I think maybe at first she is kind of jealous of Robin. she kind of maybe thinks she's a little annoying, maybe thinks she's not super intelligent. But then again, I do love the scene when they're at like the asylum and Robin has her whole speech and manages to convince the guy to get them to see Creel.
Mhm.
And there's sort of a mutual, I think, there's a mutual
Understanding almost.
respect.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. I think it's funny too, and I think maybe the reason Nancy really doesn't like Robin, in a sense, like hear me out here, they're kind of the same person.
They're very similar.
You know, they're both characters who maybe aren't very known when they were in high school. You know, they have these certain expectations that are put onto them. You know,
Oh yeah.
Robin's, she's the band kid. She's probably pretty smart in a lot of her classes. And then Nancy was the good girl who got good grades and all this stuff. And then here they are, and they're nothing like that at all. And they have so much to give.
Oh yeah.
But they very much are those characters, and they kind of break the norms a little bit. And so at first, I feel like Nancy really just doesn't want to like Robin at all. But then they're kind of like, oh, this person's pretty cool, and I could get along with them. And then they work so good together.
They do. They work so well together.
So well. And I feel like you get that great scene when they're walking through the Upside Down and they go ahead, and then you have Eddie and Steve in the back, but Robin and Nancy are up front. They're talking and they're getting along, and I love that because they're finally like, oh, I can be myself with this person, or I like this person, or I want to get to know them.
Exactly. I do.
They all have something to offer.
What?
They all have something to offer.
Yes, exactly. I was just saying, I feel like that's also good because again, I don't think we've seen Nancy have like an on-screen good female friend who's like plot relevant.
Yeah.
Or like like I said, on-screen since Barb. So
that made me think. Sorry, that made me remember.
Oh,
I had a really big thought.
It was really funny. Lee just eyes wide, put their hand over their mouth.
I was just like, oh my gosh, I remember.
Oh my goodness.
Remember, in the library, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we were planning the Steve special.
Yes.
I found something online, and people are speculating that Robin is supposed to
like things
embody...
are coming full circle.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember you mentioning
exactly.
This.
And so Robin is very much like Barb. She's kind of Barb's like embodiment of a new character. She has her own personality traits, but she could be that new female friend for her. And we were talking that it would be really cool to see Nancy choose a female friend over her relationships with the guys.
Because it would come full circle then. Because the whole reason that it's not her fault. Yeah. But it would be in line with she chose Steve over her friend. Her friend died, and now if in season 5 she chose a friend over Steve. Because again, I think it does really seem like they're trying to get Steve and Nancy back together. I don't think it's going to happen. No. I think Nancy is a career girly. She is a strong, independent woman. I imagine her at like the New York Times in New York City. Yeah. Or something.
She would have a nice apartment flat.
Yes, she would
probably have a couple cats.
A nice condominium.
Yeah, she'd be an independent, strong businesswoman.
She's working 9 to 5.
Exactly. And I mean, we talked about how we don't think Steve would be good if he ended up with someone. And I think that's very true with Nancy as well. Yeah. I feel like she would be better off on her own.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think her and Jonathan are going to last. Yeah, and even though some people might like them too, but.
Because we see that in season 4. We see them starting to drift apart because, again, the Byers have moved to the West Coast. Were they planning to go to the same college? I think.
They were planning
on it. But Jonathan didn't get accepted.
Yeah.
Which I was going to say.
He wanted to go to a school closer to home in the end.
Yes, which I was going to say might have been for the best. I don't know anyone who's been in high school who's decided to go to the same college as the person they're dating. I cannot think of a single time in my head that has, like, worked out. Or been, like... Because, I mean...
It ends terribly in most scenarios.
I was going to say, best case scenario, things do work out, things are fine. But worst case scenario, you have a really bad breakup with this person, and now you don't even get, like, the sort of distance that going to different colleges would grant you. You're stuck on the same campus with this person, which would be a nightmare, if you ask me.
That would be a nightmare. Because you need space in that case. Exactly. And it's just hard because, they want different things. And I think, they were high school sweethearts. Yeah. But I don't think they're going to last. And maybe, maybe Jonathan and Nancy are right for each other, but I think they would need time apart for a while to develop as their own individuals, and then maybe one day come back to each other.
I think it'd be beneficial for all of these characters, like Nancy, Jonathan, and Steve, to sort of figure out what they want outside of a romantic relationship. Because we talked about that with Steve. Since season 1, he's been, like, pursuing a romantic relationship. He doesn't know what he wants outside of that. And I think it would be a lot more fulfilling for him, and I think it would be especially a lot more fulfilling for Nancy if season 5 ends with them not being together. Because, again, like we said, they have different ideas what they want for the future. Nancy, I absolutely feel like she's gonna be some incredible journalist
Oh, for
in like
sure.
New York City. And Steve said he wants like, like a nice house and a bunch of kids. And I just
Yeah. And she does not want to
that's
be a
not what she
housewife.
wants.
No.
That's not what she wants.
So she does not want to be that stay-at-home mom. She doesn't want to be like her mom. And I
Yeah.
feel like that was stated from season 1.
Yep.
And because Jonathan and Nancy have that interaction, and Jonathan's kind of like, I can't remember. It's when she's like learning to shoot the gun and she's talking about her life and saying, I'll probably get a nice house. I'll live on a nice street like my mom and my dad.
Yes.
I'll be just like my mom. And you could see the resentment or hear
Yes.
it in her voice. And that's just not the way her life is going to end
That's
up.
not what she wants. That's maybe
Nope.
what she thought the only option was, but it's not what
Yeah.
she wants. It's
And
not.
I honestly think if none of this upside down stuff had happened and nothing happened like this in Stranger Things, she would have stayed with Steve. Barb wouldn't have died, but she probably would have drifted from Barb. She would have married Steve, lived in a big house, popped out 6 kids, and would have lived an unhappy life.
And it wouldn't have been good for either of them because it's not what Nancy would have wanted. I think it is what Steve would have wanted, but he would have been able to tell that she wasn't happy.
Yeah, which would have made him unhappy.
Which would have made him
because he would want a happy wife. He'd want a happy wife, happy life.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever the saying is that people say.
And I don't know. I do hope that they decide to go not with that route for season 5. Because
I really
again,
hope so.
like I said, I think it would be a lot more fulfilling for a lot of these characters if they try to figure out who they are outside of romantic relationships. Which I understand that might not necessarily happen because again, they're all trauma bonded together.
Yeah.
They're all like, and again, that's sort of the expectation at this time. There's these sort of immense societal expectation. It's like you get a partner. But I think it would be so much better for Steve, especially if he could just. It's okay, Steve. If he could just, I don't know, stop fixating so much on finding a girlfriend.
Focus on yourself a little bit.
Exactly.
Maybe move out of Hawkins.
Yeah.
Go do something. And then, hey, hypothetical here, Robin moves to college. He would probably follow her, live in an apartment on his own, or maybe they'd live in an apartment together. He'd find someone nice, or he would just figure himself out for a while. Or maybe he goes to college. Maybe he saves up and he goes to college on his own. And then he'll meet someone there, and he's going to be 10 times happier.
I feel like no matter what happens, I love Steve and Robin's friendship. I don't want to see them separated.
No. I would love the idea of like Robin going off to college and Steve being like, well, I'm going to go with you. And just
like,
ups and leaves.
I've been thinking of moving to this same area for no particular reason, just completely unrelated. And Robin's just like, okay.
And I maybe can't afford an apartment by myself. Would you maybe like to potentially roommate?
I want to see. I do want to see a Stranger Things like sequel series where it's just the misadventures of Robin and Steve, like living in a terrible off-campus apartment, like navigating college and stuff. I think that'd be so fun.
And I would love to see Nancy, staying friends with them, and maybe even Jonathan. But
in touch. They make guest appearances. It's like a sitcom.
Exactly.
They walk on the screen and there's like a solid 5 Disney Channel style minutes of just applause and cheering.
Exactly.
Very awkward.
It's like a spin-off show or a show where it's like years later, like Fuller House they made, and it's like then you have the original cast come in and they're all like, woo, oh my gosh. It'd be something like that. And they all stay in touch. They don't have any bad blood, but they're not dating. They are not romantically involved.
Yes, exactly. That'd be so fun. I do hope that, however, season 5 ends, maybe we do get at least some sort of maybe flash forward to see a glimpse to see what their futures look like.
I would love that.
I think it would probably be okay if they left it a little open-ended. I think that's better sometimes because I think depending on what happens when they flash forward, a lot of people might not like it. I mean, depending on what it is, we might not like what they give us. It might be more satisfying for us to imagine our own endings for these characters.
I've done that with plenty of shows.
Oh yeah. But I still think it would be really fun. I do love Steve and Robin so much.
I know. I do too.
Himbo lesbian solidarity, man.
Oh, for real.
Beautiful.
Rest in power to my... Don't actually... Wait, they're not dead. Why'd I say that?
Whoa. Don't start manifesting things.
No.
Don't manifest their deaths. Lee, no. What have you done?
I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't mean that. I went on autopilot for a second. It was like, rest in power. It was like, wait, no. They're not dead. They better not die.
But yeah.
Anyway. I swear, if they die now...
You'll get a very angry phone call.
There's no wood.
What? There's the door. The door.
It's too far.
There's a pencil. That's wood.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, I knocked on wood, you guys. Everything's fine.
They're fine. We're all good.
No one's gonna die.
Oh yeah.
Nope.
Oh yeah, but I don't know. I think it'll be interesting, and I I really do envision Nancy being a bad bee at some like
Mhm.
newspaper company somewhere because
Oh,
she
she
would be
would run
such
her
a
own
great
business.
she would be such a great reporter because I mean listen, if she's dealt with like interdimensional beings and threats and like went to Vecna's house to like beat him up, which I think it was so funny. I
Literally.
told you about this. I saw the one thing that was like Vecna threatened Nancy so that she'd stay out of his way and not be a threat, but in response she decided to like pull up to his house and beat him up because
Literally.
he was like, oh, this Nancy character is dangerous, let's warn her to stay away. And
Yeah.
Nancy's immediate response was, I'm gonna blow up your house. And he was like, oh, this backfired.
I'm going to light you on fire
Yeah.
and fill you with lead.
Exactly.
Basically.
Exactly.
She was not going to let him get away with it.
She's as we have written here, circled with stars. She's the
Yes.
Rambo of the series.
She really is.
She's like the 80s action hero of the movie, of
Mhm.
not the movie, of the series.
The series. I mean, one could argue that it's almost like a movie. It's just a really long movie that has
Mhm.
multiple sequels.
It's like
And the sequels are good.
longest movie you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's the longest on-running movie you've ever seen in your entire
Oh,
life.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I love Stranger Things. Goodness.
God. Yeah, it's
A great series.
so good. And again, I do love Nancy
She's a great
because
character.
she's such a good character. And again, I love all the female characters
Mhm.
in Stranger Things because they're all. Because listen, I love me a good '80s movie. The female characters have the depth of a piece of wet cardboard
Mhm.
most of the time. They're mostly like I watched the movie. Have you seen The Lost Boys? Because we need to watch The Lost
No.
Boys if you haven't.
No, I haven't.
80s vampire movie.
You mentioned it at
We
lunch.
are going to watch it sometime. Love that movie. The one main female character, it's unfortunate. She's mainly just a pretty face and a damsel in distress. It's sad, but the movie is so good, I give it a pass. But I feel like that's what sort of differentiates Stranger Things from a lot of actual 80s media, which is you don't have that level of like kind of misogynistic writing. So you end up with actually like really well-rounded, complex, three-dimensional female characters.
Exactly.
And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love it so much. I love you've got Nancy, who's like the Rambo of the series. We've got Robin, who's kind of like awkward. She's very intelligent, not the most socially like competent.
Yeah.
You've got Max, who's very confident skater girl. It's
Mhm.
just it's so good. It's so good.
So many
Mhm.
great, well-rounded
Mhm.
characters. And it's one of those shows where not a single thing is mentioned and nothing is left unturned. Everything
Yes.
loops together. There are no loose strings, which is the biggest downfall any show,
Mm-hmm.
book, any form of writing
yeah.
or media can have happen is leaving loose strings of mentioning something and forgetting it and then
Yep.
never bringing it back in. Well,
Oh,
what
yeah.
happened to that character? What happened to this plot line?
Yeah,
No, they
because-
bring it all together.
Exactly, because I feel like the Duffer Brothers from the beginning, they've known what they've wanted to do.
Yeah.
They've had a general idea. It wasn't one of the things where like it was something that they were adding on to and developing as they went, which I'm sure they did.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
they had the framework down from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said for having an idea of what you're doing from the start. There's a lot of benefits, a lot of drawbacks. Like there's a lot of benefits and drawbacks to like making stuff up as you go. But I'd say one just very large benefit of knowing where you're going from the start, it makes things go a lot smoother. And like you said, it makes it easier to like sort of tie up loose ends and sort of take something from season 1 that's left unanswered and then finally answer it in like season 4.
Exactly. And it's beautiful. I love it.
It's so well done.
I love it so much. And I love Nancy. She's
It is,
great.
It is. I'm obsessed with this sort of preppy girl who maybe wants to be popular character being like the coolest, most competent like action hero of the show.
So great.
Because I feel like it would have been so easy to assign that role to Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It would have been.
it would have made sense. And I mean, he does fight and get beat up in every season, but he doesn't win. He's not good
Exactly.
at it. He's
He
kind of
gets-
like the punching bag.
Exactly. He gets beat up every season, but Nancy
Mhm.
almost succeeds every season with
Yes.
having it. Like, she comes in, she has her gun, and she goes straight forward for it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
she wins.
She aims for the head. She aims for
She
the head. She
does.
goes for the kill.
She leaves no strength. She leaves nothing behind.
Exactly. And again, it would have been so easy for them to do this one way, but the fact that they didn't and they chose to do it this way, I think makes all the difference. It makes all the difference.
All the snaps for the Duffer Brothers.
All the snaps for the Duffer Brothers. Yeah.
They're great.
It is great. All right. Do we have anything more we'd like to talk about Nancy?
I don't think so.
All
I mean,
right.
we're wrapping up on time.
I think we're wrapping up a little early because we started a little later, I think.
That is true.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts?
Live, laugh, love Nancy Wheeler.
Live, laugh, love
Girl
Nancy
boss
Wheeler.
of the century.
We love her.
Exactly, yeah.
She is just amazing.
She
Has
is
been from the
incredible.
beginning.
Yes, I just such a strong, well-rounded, complex character.
And we love her for that.
We do.
Thank you, Duffer Brothers, for
Yes.
giving us Nancy Wheeler.
Yes, the Duffer Brothers are personally listening to this.
Yes, they are.
Hanging on our every word
Hey,
with anticipation.
If we manifest it, maybe they are. So hello, Duffer Brothers.
Yeah.
It's Shelby and Lee.
It is, yes. All right. Well, that does it for this week's episode of Peculiar Happenings.
Yes.
We will see you next time.
All right.
Thank you for listening.